Hello, viewer, and welcome to Worldview, a program designed to bring you up to speed with trending developments the world over. My name is Xavier Roberts, reaching you live from Uyo, the Akwa Ibom State capital. And on our top stories today, Ukraine's military intelligence chief says drone attack on airbase in Russian city of Pskov on Tuesday was launched from inside Russia. Singaporeans head to polls in city-state's first contested presidential election in more than a decade. U.S. reportedly deports dozens to Haiti despite telling citizens to leave country. Details of these stories and more in a moment. First on Worldview today, Ukraine's military intelligence chief has said that the drone attack on an airbase in the Russian city of Pskov on Tuesday was launched from inside Russia. Kirilo Budanov said 2 Ilyushin cargo planes were destroyed and 2 damaged. Russia says 4 were damaged actually, but Budanov did not say whether the attack was carried out by Ukrainian or Russian operatives. Ukraine's drone attacks on Russia occur almost daily. It had already admitted the Pskov attack, but Budanov's comments appear to end speculation that it was caused by a long-range weapon. On Thursday, President Volodymyr Zelensky said that a Ukrainian-made weapon had hit a target at a distance of 700 kilometers. Pskov is nearly 700 kilometers from the Ukrainian border. He said the drones targeted the tops of the aircraft, the location of the fuel tanks, and a critical section of the wing spar. Away from that, Singaporeans headed to the polls today in the city-state's first contested presidential election in more than a decade, a vote being closely watched as an indication of support for the ruling party after a rare spate of political scandals. Reports say that the president's role is largely ceremonial, but there are stringent requirements for the position, which formally oversees the city's accumulated financial reserves and holds the power to veto certain measures and approve anti-graft probes. While the presidency is a non-partisan post under the Constitution, political lines were already drawn ahead of the election to replace incumbent Halima Yacob, who ran unopposed for her 6-year term in 2017. According to reports, the Prime Minister runs the city-state's government, currently Lee Hsien Loong of the People's Action Party (PAP), which has ruled Singapore continuously since 1959. Meanwhile, observers say the vote could indicate the level of PAP support ahead of general elections due in 2025 or discontent after recent scandals, including a corruption probe into the transport minister and the resignations of 2 PAP legislators over an affair. Moving on now, U.S. President Joe Biden's administration has moved to close loopholes that allow people to sell guns without a dealer license, which would require them to perform background checks on purchases. The Justice Department released detailed rules that follow the Biden-backed Safer Communities Act passed by Congress in June 2022 in reaction to the large number of shooting deaths, especially in mass shootings across the country. The rules take aim at gaps in the law that have allowed gun sellers to avoid obtaining licenses by claiming not to make money from transactions or by saying their lack of a storefront or insignificant sales volume exempts them from dealer requirements. It also tightens the rules on collectors who buy and sell guns and on failed gun dealers selling their inventories. The aim, the Justice Department said, is to force more firearms sellers to check the backgrounds of prospective purchasers in a national database in order to screen out felons and others forbidden from owning guns. Meanwhile, former U.S. President Donald Trump has pleaded not guilty to charges that he led a criminal conspiracy to overturn his 2020 election loss in the southern state of Georgia. The Republican presidential frontrunner, who faces 13 felony counts, including racketeering, entered his plea in a court filing waiving his right to appear at an arraignment next Wednesday. Recall that Trump surrendered to the Fulton County Jail in the state capital, Atlanta, last week and was the first former U.S. president pictured in a police mugshot. Released on a $200,000 bond and given the inmate number PO 1135809, Trump was accused of colluding with 18 other defendants in a multi-pronged attempt to overturn his defeat in Georgia. Trump is asking for his case to be severed from co-defendants who have sought a speedy trial, including Kenneth Chesebro, a Trump campaign lawyer due to go before a jury in October. And less than 24 hours after the United States urged its citizens to leave Haiti as soon as possible due to increased violence, authorities deported dozens of Haitian nationals back to the country, an immigration rights advocate has confirmed. Migueline Joseph, executive director of the Haitian Bridge Alliance Advocacy Group, told media she has been in contact with some of the families of the Haitians who were on Thursday's removal flight from Alexandria, Louisiana to Port-au-Prince. U.S. media outlets, including The Hill and the Miami Herald, also reported on the deportation flight, which Joseph said carried more than 60 people. Several flight tracking websites showed that a plane was set to arrive in the Haitian capital from Alexandria shortly before noon local time. Joseph said resuming deportations to Haiti is inhumane, explaining that asylum seekers and migrants are being sent back to the same conditions they fled in the first place, if not worse. She compared the crisis in Haiti to a raging fire. One of the poorest countries in the world, Haiti has been facing rampant gang violence. It has also suffered from periodic natural disasters and a long-standing political deadlock made worse by the assassination of President Jovenel Moïse in July 2021. Away from that, a leader of the far-right Proud Boys has been sentenced to 17 years in prison, one of the longest terms yet handed out over the U.S. Capitol riot. Prosecutors said U.S. Army veteran Joe Briggs, aged 38, was an instigator of the storming of Congress on 6 January 2021. The former InfoWars correspondent was convicted of seditious conspiracy and other charges in May. In court, Briggs pleaded for leniency and expressed remorse for his actions. The sentence handed down by U.S. District Judge Timothy Kelly is below both federal sentencing guidelines and the 33 years sought by prosecutors. Another Proud Boys member, Zachary Rell, was sentenced on Thursday to 15 years, also on a charge of seditious conspiracy. Rell, a former U.S. Marine and leader of the Philadelphia branch of the Proud Boys, was seen on video spraying a chemical irritant at officers outside the Capitol during the riot. Briggs was convicted of a slew of charges in May, including seditious conspiracy, intimidation or threats to prevent officials from discharging their duties, and interference with law enforcement during civil disorder. In a sentencing memo, prosecutors said that Briggs, a veteran of the war in Iraq and former correspondent for conspiracy website InfoWars, employed his military experience to direct and control large groups of men under his command to lead a revolt against the government. Moving on now, a massive manhunt is underway in Pennsylvania for a prison inmate who escaped just a week after being sentenced to life in prison for murder. Brazilian national Danilo Cavalcante, aged 34, escaped from Chester County Prison in West Chester on Thursday morning. A week ago, he was sentenced to life in prison for stabbing an ex-girlfriend to death in front of her two small children. Cavalcante is also wanted for murder in Brazil. At a news conference on Thursday, the prison's acting warden, Howard Holland, offered no details on how the escape took place, saying only that an investigation is ongoing. He was last seen walking along a road in nearby Pocupson Township about an hour after he fled the prison. Residents of a 6-mile, that is 9 kilometers radius around the prison were notified of the escape and warned to be extremely cautious. Dozens of law enforcement agencies are now involved in the search and have deployed dogs, drones and helicopters to help find him. In a Facebook post last week, the Chester County District Attorney's Office said that Brando had threatened to expose him to the police after learning that Cavalcante had an open warrant for murder in Brazil. Away from that now, Pope Francis has arrived in Mongolia for the first papal visit to the Asian nation as he sent a message of unity and peace to neighboring China in a bid to improve ties. The 86-year-old pontiff's trip through Monday to the Buddhist majority nation is a gesture of support for the teeny community of Catholics, numbering about 1,400, but at the same time a strategic move to improve Vatican ties with neighbors China and Russia. Francis, who arrived in the morning following a 9-hour journey from Rome, told journalists aboard the papal plane that the vast, sparsely populated country of Mongolia was one that can be understood with the senses. Asked by a journalist whether he found diplomacy difficult, the Pope said sometimes one needs a sense of humor. Now, Thailand's king has reduced the 8-year prison sentence of former Prime Minister Thaksin Shinawatra to a year. Thaksin, who returned home last month after 15 years of self-imposed exile, was immediately sent to jail. He was then moved to the luxury wing of a state hospital after complaining of heart problems. Thaksin had previously said the outstanding sentences over charges of corruption and abuse of power were politically motivated. Deposed by a military coup in 2006, Thaksin, one of Thailand's most influential and polarizing personalities, left the country 2 years later to avoid a prison sentence. His return on 22nd August was assumed to be part of a wider political deal, and it was one that was meant to bring his popular Pheu Thai party together with its one-time adversaries in a compromise government. And it did that, and hours after he arrived, a new coalition government led by Pheu Thai voted its candidate Srettha Thavisin as the new prime minister. The coalition includes Thaksin's former military rivals who deposed his party in 2014 in a coup. More than 50 prison guards and 7 police officers have been taken hostage in several jails in Ecuador, according to officials. 2 car bombs also went off in the capital, Quito, both targeting the country's prisons authority, SNAI. Nobody was hurt in the bombings, and at least 6 people have been arrested. The authorities believe at least one of the incidents could be retaliation for a police search for weapons at one of the country's biggest jails. Ecuador's Interior Minister Juan Zapata said the authorities were taking action but did not give further details. Elsewhere, the Philippines has imposed a price cap on rice on the Southeast Asian country as this Southeast Asian country grapples with some of the highest inflation in the region. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. signed an executive order capping prices in light of the considerable economic strain on Philippines.